All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's class. The Rabbi's Talmud class is sponsored by Ellen and George Sheeran, Nora and Jack Skiba, in memory of Libby and Harold Grill, and by the David Susser Trust.
Thank you very much, Keith. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I will share my screen in a while. Just to remind you, we started speaking some weeks ago about the three major religious movements: Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. And last meeting, we devoted to some conservative tshuvot, or reactions on contemporary issues. And today we will continue. So I made a selection of contemporary tshuvot on several different issues. And we are not reading the whole tshuva because it's very long. We are reading just the question and the answer. But I need to make it clear that the most important part of the tshuva is not the question or the answer, but what comes between the two of them, because it's how we prove that our answer is good and our answer is Jewish. So we need to bring a whole bunch of Jewish sources from the Torah, from the Talmud, from the Middle Ages, and so on, in order to make our point. But as we cannot here spend hours studying each tshuva, we are just now bringing the she'elah, the question, and the tshuva, and we will discuss and talk a little bit about them. I will be very happy to make this meeting a little bit more participative, in the sense of I want to hear your reactions on each of those answers, each of those tshuvot.
Yossi, you'll have to come up with something to say.
Does he have something to say already? Always.
I'm sure he's thinking about it.
And we like it.
No.
So let's start from conversion to Judaism, and I will need some help from several readers here, and who would be able to start us off?
I'll read.
Okay, thank you.
May one convert a married Gentile who intends to remain married to the unconverted Gentile spouse even after completion of the conversion?
Okay, so this is a very important question before we read the answer. And in Brazil, I led a congregation in which conversion was a very, very big and important issue. We did around 50 conversions a year.
A year? Wow.
50 conversions a year. So it's a lot. We had group classes, and most of them were conversions to marry some Jewish person, but not all of them. Some of them were just people that fell in love with Judaism and wanted to become Jewish. And this is a question that came to us several times. Sometimes someone came to us and said, you know, I want to be Jewish. And we asked, okay, are you single? Are you married? And the person sometimes will say, no, I'm married. And my spouse is not Jewish and doesn't want to become a Jewish. So once we make this conversion, what are we doing? We are creating an interreligious couple. we are almost creating an interreligious marriage by conversion, by converting one of them. So this is a very tough situation, difficult situation. And let's read the answer, and then I will comment a little bit, and I would love to hear your thoughts.
A married Gentile may convert to Judaism even though the convert intends to remain married to the unconverted Gentile spouse. Such conversion should take place, however, only after proper counseling and consultation, assuring that the convert will be able to practice the Jewish religion without interference by the non-Jewish members of the family. Under those conditions, those who seek to shelter under the wings of the Shekhinah, may their numbers increase in Israel, and may blessings be bestowed upon them.
Okay, so let's say this is a very open and progressive answer to the question. And before I comment on this one, I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with the answer?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's it's saying that it's not to be taken lightly, and you're making a commitment, even where there might be pressure against it.
Yeah, I think it
Okay,
does make sense.
yes, does make sense.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, you want to make sure just that the person who converts to Judaism, that the spouse that doesn't interfere.
Okay,
I think
yes, Terry.
you may have the potential also of not just getting one more Jew, but there may be children involved, and you may have the opportunity to bring those children into Judaism as well.
Okay. Anyone else? So I think that this kind of arrangement works for an older couple that does not want anymore to have children.
Okay.
Because if there are children involved, I think it would be very, very challenging. Judaism is a family issue. So we cannot prevent someone who was born Jew to marry a non-Jewish person. But in this case, we have two people that are not Jewish. They want to remain together. If they want to have children, converting one of them to Judaism, I think, creates a very, very tough situation. As we know, Judaism is all about family. So for an older couple that does not want anymore to have children, they have their children already, but they want to make their life together, and one of them want to be Jewish, I don't see a big problem here. But if they still want to have children, I think they need to have a family decision. If Judaism is going to...
Not to interrupt, Rabbi, but if let's say it's a young couple who doesn't have children yet, and it's the woman who wants to convert to Judaism, and if the spouse agrees, then I think technically, I don't know that the child should be Jewish, right? Because the woman is converting to Judaism.
So if the woman is converting to Judaism, technically the children will be Jewish.
Right,
And if the man is converting to Judaism, technically the children are not going to be Jewish.
Right.
But I'm not so concerned about the technicality, but I'm concerned about the environment and the chances that those children will have a Jewish opportunity to grow up as Jewish children, and having one parent being Jewish and the other no makes it more difficult. It doesn't mean that it is impossible, but this is a situation that I wouldn't like to help creating in the first place as the rabbi. So I would talk to this couple. If Judaism is going to be your only religion at home, so maybe you should convert the two of you.
Right.
And if Judaism is not going to be the only religion at home, maybe none of you should convert to Judaism. But this is a collective decision if they are intending to have children. This is how I understand it. Yes, Harold.
Well, isn't it almost the same thing as a mixed marriage without
Yes.
a conversion. Well, it's really the same thing, right?
Yes, but the difference is that when someone is born Jewish and decides to be with a non-Jew, we cannot do anything but counseling, but we cannot prevent a Jew person to being with a non-Jew. We cannot prevent it, but in this case we can prevent one of them of becoming Jewish. we have here some power that we don't have in a situation of a natural born Jew.
Right. Well, I think there are probably some Orthodox communities that felt they would have the power to prevent a mixed marriage.
But they actually don't, because the person can always leave the community and
Right,
keep on staying with the non-Jewish spouse. So you can make some pressure, but we cannot decide, right?
Right.
Let's advance to another one. Who would like to read about smoking, please? Thank you, Roberta.
Smoking. In light of dozens of scientific studies proving the dangers of smoking, is smoking prohibited by Jewish law? Furthermore, is it forbidden in a public place? Should I read the conclusion?
Yes, please read the conclusion and then I will comment.
In conclusion, smoking is absolutely forbidden by Jewish law. Similarly, it is forbidden to smoke in a public place, and if one transgresses and smokes, he must move away if someone protests.
So I will explain to you why I brought this specific answer here, because normally the conservative answers, the conservative tshuvot, are more progressive, are more liberal than the Orthodox tshuvot. And this is an exception. Orthodox Jews do smoke. And conservative Judaism decided to forbid smoking, to prohibit smoking. Why? Because we take into consideration science. And Orthodox tshuvot will not take into consideration science. They will say whatever is not written in the Jewish sources does not exist in the world. If it's not an information coming from the Talmud or the Torah or the Shulchan Aruch, it's not important. But the conservative tshuvot will take into consideration both the Jewish knowledge and the non-Jewish knowledge and the scientific knowledge. And there are Orthodox tshuvot on smoking, permitting smoking, and saying that as our ancestors smoked, we are too allowed to smoke. They will not take into consideration the scientific findings about smoking. Today, everyone agrees that smoking is bad for health, and doing harm intentionally to our health is forbidden. So smoking should be forbidden too. Yes, Roberta, please. And then Hannah.
I don't really agree with this.
Why?
I have to say I don't smoke, but
Okay.
I don't agree with this because there are a lot of things that are bad for your health that are not forbidden by Jewish law. I mean,
For
does
instance?
conservative Judaism forbid drinking? Does it forbid drinking in excess? No. Does it forbid, I mean, I don't know if it forbids drug use, but I mean, it seems to me that people should have the right to make their own decisions about what's good for them or bad for them. I mean, I think the Orthodox Jews, you're not allowed to smoke on Shabbos, which I could see as a violation of Shabbos of the Sabbath because you're lighting a match. But I mean, I think that free will is a big part of Judaism. And why prohibit smoking when you don't prohibit other things? Where do you draw the line? Are you going to prohibit people from eating red meat because it might cause certain types of cancer?
Okay, thank you for your considerations. Let's hear Hannah and Yossi, and maybe I'll say some additional things. Yes. Hannah, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
yes.
was just going to also say that the Orthodox do not smoke on Shabbat. So I'm surprised that it's forbidden at other times. No, but they do smoke at other times.
Yes, they do smoke another time, including Yom Tov. Including Yom Tov, because Yom Tov you are not allowed to create new fire, but you can transfer fire. So if you keep a pilot candle, you can transfer fire from one place to the other. So Orthodox will smoke in Yom Tov on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbos. Yes, Yossi.
I think the Orthodox or the Haredi movement, it's a little bit, they contradict themselves. Because on one hand, Judaism respects life. And in fact, they are saying if somebody is in danger, even on Shabbat, you can drive and you can take care of the sick. So it's fascinating that under certain circumstances, the Orthodox are willing to break the Shabbat law. However, during COVID, it was absolutely fantastic. It illustrates what you are saying, because the Haredim didn't want to follow the rules of the government in terms of isolation and keeping distance and wearing masks. And the chief rabbi in certain neighborhoods said not to worry because God is with us. Let's sit wherever they study, no matter what. And in fact, they changed their point of view after a rabbi died from COVID. So I think the same situation exists here. So I'm not sure if the Haredim has to do with religion. It has to do more with tradition. This is the way they did it, and they don't want to deviate. There is really, in this way, there is not enough thinking, which surprises me. Why a rabbi, a famous rabbi, who supposedly, at least in theory, understand logic. I mean, he studies the Talmud, he studies the Kabbalah, so he uses certain logic. So here he faces a dilemma that smoking, I'm sure he reads the newspaper, or she, and it says smoking causes cancer. And yet it doesn't make a comment. So it may be that it's tradition, and also they don't want to alienate their followers. So they want to keep kind of peace. So
yes, I agree with
religious.
I agree with you, Yossi. And during the pandemic, this was a very, very big challenge, because among ultra-Orthodox populations, the number of people that would take vaccines was very small, and they became spreading areas. So this was a very, very big challenge. And just to respond to Roberta, yes, there is a tshuva forbidden to drink in excess, drink too much, because you are harming your health too. So I think religion has always had this role of educating people. and inviting people to have a healthier life with the knowledge available on that generation, for that generation. So Maimonides, for instance, was in favor of sports. And he said that sports are very important. You cannot only take care of your mind, you need to take care of your body. So if today, on the 21st century, the information is available, and we know that tobacco and smoking raises the chance for you to die from cancer, I think the rabbis have an obligation to inform their communities, and in an halachic language, to say to them, do not smoke. If we are talking of someone that already started to smoke, maybe it will be very difficult to stop. But if you are considering start smoking and you are a conservative Jew, you should take into consideration this tshuva and not start smoking, and take care of your goof. Because I think smoking or not smoking in Shabbat, for me personally, becomes a very tiny question when you compare it to the possibility of doing harm to your own health and maybe dying from cancer. So I in particular, I like this tshuva very much. And it is interesting because this is an example of a tshuva that is stricter in the conservative movement than in the Orthodox movement. Normally, we will see the opposite. Normally, the conservative movement will try to make it more flexible, but this is an exception. So let's advance a little bit. Let's read about cremation. Who would like to lead us on this one, please? Just English reading. Yes, please, Stephen.
Okay. The question of the permissibility of cremation according to Jewish law is coming to the fore again. This time, it is not a problem caused by a changing theology, nor one posed by the pressure of assimilation, which makes Jews assume the customs of their non-Jewish neighbors, but rather an economic problem created by the present situation in which we witness an increasing population and a decrease in ground available for cemeteries. As time progresses, less and less ground will be available for burial purposes. This situation prompts us to consider the question anew.
Just a moment here, Stephen, just to be sure. So I commented on this tshuva last meeting. So we have a real challenging situation in which more and more people will die, and the way Judaism buries their dead makes that more ground and more ground and more ground is needed. So just to give an example from where I come from São Paulo, we are on our 5th Jewish cemetery in São Paulo already for a community of 60,000 Jews only. So in a short while, we'll have more people buried than more people alive. And more land, more and more ground will be needed for the dead. In places like Europe, this is a problem because they do not have enough land for the living. So this is a legitimate question that needs to be addressed. So let's see what the Rabbinical Assembly said. Stephen, in
1939 and 1954, the Rabbinical Assembly issued the following rulings. Cremation is not permitted. when it is done by the family in disregard of Jewish practice, the rabbi may officiate at the service in the funeral parlor only. The ashes may be buried in a Jewish cemetery and appropriate prayers may be said, but not by the rabbi, lest it be interpreted as a proof.
Okay.
Proceeding to
So this is an example that the conservative movement was not progressive or flexible, because cremation is a real prohibition for Judaism, and we still forbid cremation as a way to say to say farewell to a Jewish body. So still it is forbidden, but we see that there is a challenge there, and this challenge is going to grow in the future. So I commented with you last meeting that in Jerusalem, for instance, this is a real problem, because there are many Jews that want to be buried in Jerusalem, because they believe that when the Messiah comes, they will be the first one to revive, to live again. And they are starting to bury in Jerusalem one on the top of the other, as it happens in non-Jewish cemeteries, because there is no more space, there is no more option. One exception for cremation is when the person died from a disease that, if the person is buried, this disease can contaminate the water and contaminate the city. So depending on the reason why this person died, exceptionally, the cremation will be allowed in order to avoid an endemic. Yossi wants to say something.
I have a question, Rabbi. The daily prayer, we say Mechayeh Mitim.
Yes.
So in order to say Mechayeh Mitim, you need to have bones. So if you cremate them, then you don't have anything, you have dust. So how the Mechayeh Mitim can apply to dust?
Yossi, also, if you bury someone after some years, you are not going to have any bone there. There is a process of decomposition of the body that makes the entire body disappear after some years. So the process of cremation, and I hear what you are saying, only it speeds it up. But what is going to happen with the bodies under the earth is very similar to what happens with someone who is cremated. The only difference is that it takes longer, but it's not that long. Yes, Terry.
Sort of an aside, what is the prohibition, or are we allowed to donate a body or organs upon death? Because if you donate your body, apparently you won't have anything to bury. If you donate some organs, you still have other things to bury, I suppose.
So this is a great question, and very, very important one. So some people think that donating organs is forbidden for Jews, and it's not right. Donation of organs is a huge mitzvah.
Right.
If you have the ability to save someone's life, it's much more important to do so than, as I said to Yossi, to have your organ buried and eaten by worms, because this is what happens there. If you have the ability to save someone's life, there is no mitzvah more sacred, more holier than this one. So donating organs is not forbidden, is not prohibited by Judaism, including Orthodox Judaism. The Israel Rabbinate wrote a tshuva allowing people to donate organs and to save people's life. In in Orthodox legislation, they will have some additional rules, like you are only allowed to do so to save a Jewish life and not for a non-Jew, which for us as conservative Jews is not a comfortable thing, and we would be willing to save anyone's life, not only Jewish lives. But the fact is that both Orthodox and conservative Jews encourage donation, organ donations. Only the ultra-Orthodox Jews will resist.
So what about donating just to science as opposed to donating to a particular person?
So this is a little bit more polemic. And what I know today is that it is possible to build a model so similar to a real body that it's not necessary anymore a real body for the medical schools. So medical schools are using models made in laboratory that are identical to real bodies, and they are less and less depending on actual bodies in order to study and to make fake surgeries or fake procedures and to teach their students. This is what I know about it, which is fascinating. But yes, but before it was possible, donating a body in order to learn and to potentially save lives was allowed. Yes. Okay, let's go to the next one. Great. Abortion. We had this theme already, so we can go a little bit quicker here, but let's read this one too. Who wants to read about abortion, please? Hannah, please. Thank you for being with us, Hannah. You need to unmute yourself, Hannah.
Yeah. Is abortion permitted according to Jewish law? Jewish tradition does not permit abortion on demand. However, it sanctions abortion under some circumstances. The Rabbinical Assembly Committee on Jewish Law and Standards takes the view that an abortion is justifiable if a continuation of pregnancy might cause the mother severe physical or psychological harm, or when the fetus is judged by competent medical opinion as severely defective.
Okay, so here Judaism has a very, very open and progressive view on abortion, very different from the Catholic view on abortion. And the Catholic view on abortion, we spoke about it in the past. The Catholic classical view on abortion is that an abortion is always a murder, regardless of the moment of pregnancy. Even if it's in the very, very beginning of the pregnancy, an abortion is always a murder, so therefore it's forbidden. In Judaism, we believe that life starts with birth. There is no actual life before birth. There is potential of life, but not life. There is no independent life before birth. So this is why we have a much more flexible attitude in regard to abortion. And the important word here on what we just read is physical or psychological harm. So we are not only talking about a woman that will die unless we have an abortion. We are talking about a woman that maybe was raped or has or is too young or is too old. So we are taking into consideration psychological aspects in order to allow abortion. So do we have any comment or question on this one before we proceed? Yes, Roberta, please.
I have a question. This is the conservative view. I was just wondering, do the Orthodox rabbis agree with this?
So the Orthodox rabbis, and this is a great question, Roberta, thank you. The Orthodox rabbis resist in considering psychological harm as a justification for abortion. So they will agree that if the fetus is harming the life of the woman and abortion is needed in order to save the mother, then abortion will be okay for Orthodox rabbis too. But psychological harm is not that much accepted as a reason to allow abortion. And the reason why, Roberta, is because psychology is very new. Freud lived in the 20th century. And for Orthodox Judaism, this new scientific information takes a while to be absorbed. As we said about smoking on Shabbat, the same thing. So Orthodox Jews do not consider psychological harm as being in the same category of physical harm. But they will agree that life starts with birth, and therefore, if the fetus is harming, is endangering the mother's life, you need to choose to make abortion in order to save the mother. Yes, Hannah. You want to say anything? No, okay.
Question, Rabbi.
Yes, please, Yossi.
What happened in a situation where the mother and the husband, they decide, they know that the fetus has a genetic problem, a defect, and they decided to have an abortion? How do the rabbis view such an act?
Okay, this is the last part of our tshuva here, right? When the fetus is judged by competent medical opinion and as severely defective. So if we are talking about a severe defect, we are not talking about, I wanted blue eyes and he has brown eyes.
No.
We are talking about something very, very severe. In this case, conservative Judaism would allow abortion.
But the Orthodox not, right?
But the Orthodox would again resist, because we are not talking about a situation that puts the mother's life in
I understand, but what
danger.
really bothers me as a secular Jew, that they don't think about the future hardship of the family or the kid. Because sometimes when I worked in Williamsburg, they had quite a few kids with Down syndrome, and yet the family don't want them.
Yes.
They put them in an institution.
Yeah.
Don't take care of them, really. So why this type of contradiction?
What you are describing exists, and we receive children in our nursery that come from Orthodox houses, and they come to our nursery because they are not accepted in their nurseries, which is terrible, which is a shame. So there is a difficulty in Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox places to deal with this capacity. Yes.
Yeah, but there is a code of ethics. Why the rabbis don't address it? This is what I don't know. It's nothing to do being in the 21st century. This problem always existed, but there should be a code of ethics. There is Shulchan Aruch. And you do need to preserve life. You need to protect life. You see, because like you said, Rabbi, when it comes to conversion, you take into account the family, you take into account the next generation. It's an amazing outlook. It's very ethical. I don't get it. I don't understand. The rabbis study day and night in the cheder. Day and night. They study 10, 12 hours. They don't walk. They don't do any physical activity. They study. What is the outcome of such things? Why they don't move a little bit like an inch to figure out how to help other people, people who suffer? You know, when I was in, I told you I was in Williamsburg, I was on a board. They asked me to help them plan for a mental health and mental retardation program. And I was devastated to see how the family almost threw the kids out. They didn't want them. And, you know, we had to get money from the government to take care of the kids. They didn't want to pay, they didn't want to feed them, they didn't want to do anything. Something is wrong with this type of an approach to life, isn't it?
Yeah, I see your anger and I agree and I can relate. Just important to say that the Orthodox are not all the same. And
correct. Yes.
And there are different groups and different levels. But I agree with you. There is a general challenge there that needs urgently to be addressed by their leadership. I agree with you, Harold and Terry.
So I find this this answer completely non-progressive.
Why?
I don't think you can even begin to label it there. First of all, the only difference between this and you say the Orthodox is allowing under a very specific, unusual circumstance. The biggest thing is, I mean, if you look at this, for instance, it says judged by competent medical opinion. Well, who's making that judgment? It says nothing about that the decision or the consideration should be the mother, in this case, the woman who's carrying the fetus. This looks like the horror show where you go in and the doctor's going to decide what's good for you or not good for you. Especially if you get a doctor who thinks he knows Jewish law. This is the situation that I had with when my mother passed away, because we were at what's it called? What's the name? Far Rockaway, the hospital, St. John's.
Yes.
So it's a Catholic institution, and they were making it real. It was a real struggle because they were going to decide whether life-sustaining equipment should be withheld. So it became a big argument. But to me, that's the whole conflict about abortion has to do, at least for those who are want it to be legal, are saying that it's up to it's the woman's decision ultimately, not some competent medical person who you don't know and who isn't necessarily motivated to do what's best for what the family wants.
Harold, if I read here the text correctly, I think that medical opinion is only for the case of a defective fetus.
Right, but it doesn't allow for, then if you take that away, then it doesn't have it, it doesn't give anything to the mother.
Yes, it does. It says right there that might cause the mother severe physical or psychological harm, period.
And
then
she's
it's
the one who
or.
decides, right?
Right, and then it's an or. But first you have that option. And what I was going to question is, if you're talking about having an abortion because a child is severely defective, unless you are taking advantage of medicine and finding out what's going on with the fetus, you won't know. So perhaps in these super Orthodox communities, they aren't doing the kind of testing that the community at large is doing. And so children are born with, horrible abnormalities, but they didn't know because they didn't, because maybe they don't believe, in abortion. So what's the point of getting all of the testing done? Because you're not going to do anything anyway.
Yes, this is part of the story. I agree, Terry. You need to do the testings in order to know that there is a severe defect before birth. Right. Yes, and the severe defect can be as hard as the absence of brain,
right,
which makes life impossible. No one lives without a brain, and you can see it, you can recognize it during pregnancy.
But then there's also, we have in the Jewish community Tay-Sachs disease.
Or Tay-Sachs, yes.
True that the child could live to be, I think, 3 or 4 years old, but that's it. So, it's come to be common practice that if a fetus is thought to be, is tested and it's positive for Tay-Sachs, it's fully accepted to have an abortion.
Mm-hmm. What I think Harold would like to see there is something like, as long as the mother wants to abort, abortion is okay, is permitted. I think that the fear there is that abortion will be used as a contraceptive mean, which is not ideal. So before being pregnant, you should try to caution and yes.
I think, Rabbi,
Yeah.
that what Harold is saying is that we need to respect the woman, and we need to respect their wishes. And it's important to keep that in mind. There are quite a lot of cases where women are being raped. And in fact, I'm sure you read about what happened in, I forgot which city in the Midwest, that a 10-year-old kid was raped. And of course, the government, in their stupidity, went after the physician. Anyhow, I think I understand what Harold is saying. What he's saying is that we need to figure out how the woman's rights are being preserved, no matter what, because it's her body and her wishes must be understood. So it could be many opportunities, not only extreme, severe physical or psychological harm. What do you do in case of rape? You can consider it as a psychological harm,
yes,
but different type of psychological harm.
Mm-hmm.
So, I agree with that. I would have loved to see a statement saying that we must respect women's wishes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very important not to skip it. because as you know, in Orthodoxy, women are always the secondary, not the primary, in many, many circumstances. So this has to change. And I had another question, Rabbi. The Rambam was a physician, right?
Yes.
Did he express any opinion about those things?
Yes. So according to Rambam, the fetus that is threatening the mother should be seen as an individual that tries to kill another individual. So Rambam calls it din rodef. Din rodef, so someone is persecuting you, you have the right to kill that person first. This is self-defense. So Rambam applies the idea of self-defense to the fetus that is putting the life of the mother in danger. The problem with Maimonides is that when he applies the self-defense or the Din Rodef law, he is considering the fetus as an independent life.
As a life.
As a life, which is not good for us. Because once we consider fetus alive, we have much more challenges in allowing abortion. So it's better for us to consider the fetus a potential life, but not an actual life, because then we can be much more flexible in abortion. Yes.
Yeah, I understand that was a very valid point considering a life, but now it seems to me with everything we learn so much as time goes on. When a fetus is at 7 months, let's say, it according to what I believe, I think science says that's almost a life. It could be a life if there was an emergency, and sometimes there are premature births, so to speak. That creates a whole new problem, and pain and all kinds of other things. That's where I guess where the biggest headache is now, more than anything else.
I agree with you, and as
big issue.
As we advance in weeks, we have a more and more independent life there. But you know, the Jewish legislation said that life starts with birth, and this is something that we want to hold because we want to be flexible in a case that abortion is needed.
That's getting harder and harder to do as they find more scientific things.
In Israel is one of the most progressive countries in regard to abortion. There is a committee that needs to approve the abortion in order for it to be paid by the state, by the government. And 98% of the requests are approved. 98% of the requests in Israel made by women or abortion are approved and paid.
Something went wrong. Shortcut says this action cannot be run because it requires.
I am muting Marty because his computer is talkative. I just muted him.
I have no idea why that happened, Rabbi.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
And, I was going to say, though, what you were just saying, that creates a lot of problems with, do they have a time limit in Israel that after that type of abortion still has to be done within a certain, say within 6 months or 5 months, which is 20 weeks or whatever, I don't know.
There is no limit for a woman to request, and everything will be analyzed. But the result is that 98% of the cases are approved, and it means that Israel is a very, very, very progressive country in terms of abortion. It's paid by the state. The state pays for the abortion in 90% of the cases that are requested. Okay, let's read one or two more before we say goodbye. Who is the next reader, please? This is an issue that we are discussing now in ritual, and we have updated our practice recently in the synagogue because of this particular tshuva. Who would like to read? So I will read this one. Calling non-binary people to Torah honors. How should we honor a non-binary individuals called to the Torah? So if someone goes to the Torah and says, I am not he and I am not she, I do not feel identified as a male or a female, I am something else, I am they, I am not he or she. So the rationale that underlines calling people up to the Torah by name is that of derech eretz, civility in interpersonal relations. This time-honored minhag requires that people of all genders be called in the way that they prefer to be called, as a basic gesture of respect. Individuals of non-binary gender should have the choice to be honored by the congregation using the gender-neutral forms of the call to the Torah and Misheberach as found in this Teshuvah, or similar forms acceptable to the rabbi and the congregation. So what we recently did here at Herjek with the approval of the ritual committee is that instead of saying Ya'amod or Ta'amod, which translates as may he be called up, may she be called up, we are saying Na La'amod, please come up. Please come up to the Torah, without specifying if it's a he or a she, in order to make everyone to feel comfortable. And we had recently 2 cases from the religious school of children that do not feel comfortable being called as he or she, and they asked to be called as they. So this is a way we found to respect them. And this is how we are now functioning. Obviously, someone that wants to be called as a he will be called as a he, and someone who wants to be called as a she will still be called as a she. But there is an option for a neutral call, and instead of saying Ya'amod or Ta'amod, may he be called or may she be called, we can also say, please come up to the Torah without specifying. Okay.
So then what is the bat or the ben? Daughter of or son of? What do you
instead? Yeah, good question, excellent question. Instead of bat or ben, we say mi beit, meaning from the house of, and we say the names of the parents. So we say the name of the person, mi beit, from the house of. We don't use ben or bat. We say mi beit, and then we say the name of the parents.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Great. We are about to conclude. Do you want to conclude with wine? It's a bit long, and riding car on Shabbat. Let's keep those for the future. And just in a word, so conservative Judaism permits non-kosher wine for social consumption. If we are talking about a ceremony like a Brit Milah or a wedding or a Shabbat, we still need kosher wine. But for social consumption, it is allowed to have non-certified wine. And why? Because the kosher wine and the non-kosher wine are identical. There is no difference between the two of them. And why do we have kosher wine in the first place? Because in the past, the wine was used for idolatry. And we wanted to be sure that the wine that we are using for Jewish ritual was not made for idolatry. And the way to assure this was to have all the process supervised by an observant Jew. So an observant Jew should supervise, oversee the entire process, and then you are sure that that specific wine was not made for a non-Jewish idolater, for idolatry. So as today, wine is not made by Jew or non-Jew, wine is made by machines. Here in the US, 100% of the process is machines, is not people. You cannot talk anymore about Jew or non-Jew because it's a robot. And this is the reason why the conservative movement allowed for social gatherings non-kosher wine, but still, if you are using for a brit milah, for a wedding, for a bar mitzvah, for some Jewish celebration, you should have the kosher wine. If someone wants to read the entire tshuva, just send me an email. And finally, riding the car or Shabbat is something that we have already mentioned. In the 1950, so we are talking about 73 years ago, the conservative movement allowed people to ride their cars to the synagogue. And this is connected to what was happening with Judaism here in America. The Jews started moving to the suburbs, to places that synagogues didn't exist. And the only way for them to get to the synagogue was driving their cars. So this was a way to save Judaism back there in the 1950s. Once again, if someone wants to read the entire tshuva, I'll be more than happy to send all of them for you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
If any final words?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next meeting
Thank
on
you.
Afterlife.
Okay, have a nice evening. Thank you.
You too. Have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Great. I'm happy. Mhm.